You're listening to the Align to Amplify podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Sarah and Haley.
Welcome to Align to Amplify. I am Sarah Garrison, an intuitive business healer, and I am here with
Haley Lewis, brand accelerator and executive creative advisor.
And today we have Laura Lee Paha joining us. Laura Lee, what do you do? Tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, hi, and thanks so much for having me on. I am a healer, and I specialize in generational and family healing, primarily serving women who have a hard time prioritizing themselves. And I focus on helping them shift that so they can begin to prioritize themselves and then enjoy amazing relationships with their children and families.
So when you say prioritizing yourself, you know, I've seen a trend over the last several years where it's like, you know, self-care, the self-care. Mm-hmm. But then people are posting pictures of pedicures and massages and, and that's all great too. But I'm assuming when you're talking about that in what you do, go into a little more detail because I'm sure it's a little bit more than a massage.
It is. It might even be simpler than that. Simpler in theory, but harder in application. But it's about taking time for yourself. Most of the women that I work with are mothers, and they're also usually career women, and they are living fast-paced lives where they're focused on taking care of everyone else and excelling in their career, and it leaves them with no time for themselves. Usually the first assignment that I'll give somebody is to start off your day with 5 minutes of doing absolutely nothing. And oftentimes that is the hardest thing that I have to ask people to do.
You caught me on that one. You totally caught me off guard on that one because it's kind of like
nothing. What's
giving
nothing?
yourself permission to do nothing. Mm-hmm. And to be a busy mom, busy woman, busy person in life. That's a big ask. Mm-hmm. So how is that received? You said it was difficult for people, but how's that received?
Well, it's received well because it's just 5 minutes. And I think when they start trying, they realize that 5 minutes of doing nothing it can feel like a really long time. And I'll start off by saying, pour a cup of coffee. I usually suggest doing this in the morning. Pour yourself a cup of coffee, make a cup of tea. You can at least have that, but, leave your phone, leave your computer. I just want you and your tea or coffee sitting in solitude. And they'll report back and say, well, I did it, but, my mind was spinning the whole time. I was just thinking about everything that I needed to do. And the people who keep that habit consistently, it does get easier to do it, and it gets more quiet every time that they do it, and they actually look forward to doing it. But usually it's met with a lot of resistance at first.
I would think that for me, my mind would keep going. But if you do practice it, at some point, does the mind silence? Does it go quiet during the 5 minutes of nothing?
I think it does. You can compare it to meditation practice. And I think not calling it meditation actually makes it easier for people to do because meditating is even a bigger, harder ask. But it's like the more that you do it, the more you get comfortable sitting with yourself. And that's really the whole point, is to kind of help you turn down the noise of everything that's going on in life, everything that's going on around you, and to just give you a break. And at first it's uncomfortable because we're conditioned to the noise, we're conditioned to the chaos, and it's a deconditioning process. So that's exactly what makes it uncomfortable. It's just the unfamiliar. But yeah, I think a lot of people have breakthroughs in that 5 minutes of quiet time every day, and they get to the point where they can enjoy it and they can breathe and relax and actually have stillness outside of them, but also in their minds.
on this practice, is this something that you recommend for first thing in the morning? I think, is that what you said? First thing in the morning?
I do, just because I think it's a great way to like set the tone for your day. Because if you start off your day in chaos, it's really hard to find a point where you can break and take those 5 minutes. Some people prefer to do it at the end of the day, but I think kind of setting the tone for the morning is the best way to start.
Oh, that's good to know. It's interesting that you were talking about this because I was thinking years ago we invested in a hot tub, and seriously, one of the very best investments we've ever made. But we do it at night because I need to unplug before trying to go to sleep. So so sitting in that hot tub, and I would say that that's the closest ritual, I guess, that I would do where I'm doing nothing. And I have found that over the years, sometimes we'll talk when we're there, but most of the time we're just silent. And I've found benefit from it where I actually look forward to it. Like, okay, my day is over, and now it's kind of like that cap at the end of the day. But also, and Sarah knows this, I'm not a morning person. As a creative person, we are creatures of the night. 10 o'clock at night, my creative gene turns on or whatever. And so a lot of the things that I do are at night. So I think my routines are just flipped, where I do enjoy the early mornings, but that's at the end of my day, not the beginning.
Well, and I've gotten emails and text messages from her at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, like, hey, just when you wake up, this is a really cool thing.
Well, and sometimes you answer me
because I'm awake.
Because you're an early morning
I wake
person.
up.
So
So I want you, when you introduced yourself, you said you were a healer. I want you to explain a little bit more about what that is and how you heal people. So yes, the mindfulness practice, but go a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. Well, I was going to kind of bridge that just by saying, like, I start with what I call the easy stuff, even though you said that it sounds really difficult. But you have to think, if you can't take 5 minutes for yourself to do that, it's going to be really hard to get somebody to dive into the deep healing work. But let's see, the healing work that I do, I work within the energy of family systems, using a practice called Family Constellations. I'm a certified Family Constellations facilitator. And I also work with the energy of limiting beliefs, which are often gifted to us by our families and through our lineage. And those two are very closely connected, at least in my mind. So yes, I work within those systems to help people figure out and make the connection between what they're struggling with in their life in the present moment and helping them see how it's connected to something that's living within their family system. Because even after the members of your family who've come before you have passed away, even going several generations back, when things have happened in that system, the energy of it still exists. It doesn't go away. And it's carried on from generation to generation. And even if we're not aware of what happened, we very much experience the side effects and how it shows up in our lives, causing us problems. So that's what I do, is kind of bridge that gap for my clients.
That's really interesting. And I do have a question about family systems. Is that a nurture or a nature family? So, biological versus adopted family.
Right. So I'm adopted. I know you are too. And the answer is that it's both. So if you're adopted, you have the luxury of going and working within both systems, which does kind of feel like a double dose of trauma sometimes, but
Yippee.
I have a question. I just thought of this. What about the children of adopted your kids? how about your children? Do they have the luxury of 2 lineages of trauma to work through as well? Luxury. That's not a luxury.
Yeah, there's no way that they couldn't, because you have to think of it from this perspective. There's so many different ways that that trauma and wounds are inherited. So a big part of that is going to be through what we directly experience, which would be the nurturing aspect. So yes, like you're going to inherit everything that every pattern that's being passed on from that adopted lineage, but we also inherit it genetically, like it's imprinted into our genes. So you're going to receive it from the nature side as well.
I find that really interesting. I had a family reunion with my biological family this summer, and it was a cousins reunion. So we're talking, not even my biological brothers and sisters, but cousins, and walking in and meeting many of them for the first time. And it's like, wow, these are really my people. Well, it was a little more shocking than I thought it would be, but the connection was undeniable. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, I just had to say that.
So tell us a little bit more about the systems work. And you mentioned, I think, Constellation facilitator. Tell us a little bit about how that works, because I
think of stars.
Yeah, and the first time I heard about it, I thought of stars too. But I would, if you can explain it a little bit better, so that Haley understands and our audience understands what constellation work means.
Sure. So it is one of those practices that is so much easier to experience than to explain. But I've explained it to people many times before, so I'll do my best to give you a good description. But basically what we're doing is if you imagine that all energy, every person that's ever existed, every part of the system has its own unique energy, and we're all coexisting in this energetic field. So in constellation work, we say that we're working in this knowing field, and you're setting an intention. So you're putting out to the universe, like, we're working within this particular system, this particular family system. And then you're calling in every member of that family system that is relevant to the issue that the client is wanting more clarity on, wanting more awareness, or just that would be related to the problem that the client is dealing with at the present moment. And so you're bringing in these different energies into the field. And there's a couple different ways that I facilitate. One is intrapsychically. So that's where I would have the client just close their eyes, and they're picturing this room or this field in their mind's eye, and bringing the different people in. But I really like working with people in person, hands-on, which you can do just one-on-one or with groups. And when you have a group, you have this big circle in the middle of a nice space out on the floor. So that would be the field. And then you're bringing in these different elements of the system. And so it literally, when you have the setup, it does look like a constellation. Like you have the different points.
So is it kind of like you map it and
sort of? So you're just kind of feeling into the client's going to place each member of the system, and they're feeling into where they think that person should be. So they're placing them one by one. And then we just kind of look at, where's everybody standing? Who can see one another? Who can't? What does their body language look like? And that alone can give you a ton of information. You will see people that can't see each other, but their body language is like a complete mirror of the other one. And just the fact that people aren't seen in a system says a lot too. But from there, we kind of rotate and go through and ask, what's coming up for you? What are you feeling? And that's going to show us like where the blocks are in this system. And from there, we work with that energy of what's blocked and try to get it to shift, which usually just happens through exchanging these healing words, like saying things that need to be said so that things are acknowledged, so that everyone in that system knows that they belong and that things are in proper order, so the system can flow properly again. If you think about the energy flowing through that system, so it's moving through everyone, and there's just that right balance.
So when you talk about the players being set in certain places, are
Mm-hmm.
these like items, or are these physical people that come in and help you with the constellation work when
It can
you're
be
in
either.
person?
Oh, in person, it would actually be people who are standing in for the different family members.
Now, when you go around, you ask these questions. Is each person that's standing in for the family member, are they giving what comes to their mind, or is it something that you as a facilitator say, oh, this is what this person's saying?
So it's actually what they're feeling in their body. So when we start, I take them through this meditative ritual, and we ask that the ancestors allow us to feel what they feel, to hear what they hear, to see what they see, to know what they know. And we're lending our nervous system to whatever that energy wants to come through. So a lot of times people will be able to share things vocally. But usually the question I ask most often, or to start, is like, what are you feeling inside of your body? Because that can give us a lot of information.
And do those people that are standing in, are those the ones that can share the word to the client?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
And now my next question is, are the people that attend this constellation to be the stand-ins, are these people that are usually like spiritually gifted already, or can these just be everyday average people that don't understand how this all works?
Yeah, it can be anyone. Because we all have nervous systems, right? Like we all have the ability to feel energy. And most of us, even if we're not super spiritual, super aware people, we feel energy all the time. We might just call it something else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering then, like, would this be like a group session where if you got a group of people together, you could be doing the constellation for one person, everybody else is standing in for that one person, and then the next person, there could be another person. So it could be multiple, like you could do multiple people with the same group of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. And so
go ahead. Sorry.
we're doing one constellation for one person. Um, but what I always tell people is that everyone who's a part of that constellation is going to experience healing on some level. And usually it's because we've experienced similar things. Like there's going to be something that comes up that's going to resonate with every single person in that room.
So
Maybe not the exact same situation that the client's dealing with, but there's something for everyone. But like you said, like, yes, we can finish one constellation and then go on, and the same group of people can constellate an entirely different thing. In fact, that's how a lot of our group sessions go.
Okay. So when you talked about the healing process, is that something that's instantaneous, or are there takeaways? Like after the constellation is, formed, the information, if you did say you did it for me and I'm in this group and it happens, is the healing the process of going through that constellation, or do we do that and then I get a little report here? My business brain is like, do I get a little report and I take it home and I digest it and I sit with it, I meditate with it, or is there action plans? Are there things that I need to do to continue the healing process or to amplify what that healing was in my life, or how to utilize it in my daily activities, my business, my family interactions, etc. Like, what's the takeaway? How do we really make it work?
There's no implementation piece, but I think that the healing itself works on different levels. So the first aspect would just be the awareness that the constellation itself brings. So this is going to be something that can help you instantly, because you're going to see things that you probably had no idea had happened within your family or within your lineage. And just being able to see patterns and having that awareness can be the very thing that helps us be the ones that break that pattern. Because if you don't know that it's there and you don't realize that you're stuck in this loop, how are you ever going to get out of it? But awareness itself is just such a powerful tool, because when you start to see things, the things that you don't really need that aren't serving you just slowly start to fall away. Now, the other part is the unfolding of a constellation. And I've been taught that they can take 3 months up to a year for everything that happened within that one constellation to completely unfold. And that is, I think that's just part of the magic of constellation works, because I can't tell a client what's going to happen in the aftermath of a constellation. I just tell them to like really pay attention to the things that they've been struggling with, and to the things that came up in that constellation, and just see what happens in their life over the next several months.
So this
And
I'm sorry, but I just want to back up. So this unfolding thing is just the ongoing process of the healing that's happening in different layers or different steps as you just navigate through daily life.
Yes. And I can give an example. So several years ago, I had a constellation, and my problem was that I felt like there was an abundance block, because I had been trained in these different modalities that I wanted to use to help people, but I had no idea how to create and grow a business from that. It was just going to be like single session here, single session there. Didn't know how to market myself or anything. And I felt blocked because I didn't have people coming to me very often wanting to receive these healings. So I asked some of my fellow practitioners if they would do a constellation for me to help with this. And they set me up with my paternal lineage. And we were able to find that block and shift it. And a month later, I just, out of nowhere, was introduced to the business coach that I have now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And after I started working with her a month after meeting her, and within 3 months, my business was like, I had a business, whereas I didn't really have one before, but it was drastically different. I had a website, I had offers, I was out networking, I signed my first client. And I totally believe it was all connected to that constellation, because there was energy that was stuck. And if I hadn't shifted it through that constellation, I know that stuff wouldn't have unfolded. So that's like what I mean by the unfolding. That's a practical example of how they can unfold.
I like that term. I haven't heard that term before, but I like it because as a visual person, I'm like imagining you get something and you unfold and there's a little surprise, or and then you just keep going and there's something else, and and then you get to the point where I'm like, I can hardly wait to do the next unfolding. Like, what's behind curtain number 4? Like, it's a really good analogy of process of discovery. Like, I really like that. I haven't heard that before. So unfolding.
Yeah. Now, I have one more question, because I know this, but I want to make sure like the audience knows this and Haley knows this. So you've talked about like the in-person and doing groups and stuff, but is this also something that you can do remotely? So like, if I'm in Oregon and you're in Tennessee, is that something that you could do remotely via Zoom or whatever aspect?
Yes. So energy is accessible anywhere. And I think that was something really, really cool and really valuable that kind of came out of COVID, like looking for the silver lining with that, of course. But I started my training in February of 2020, and my teacher she's in Santa Fe, and she'd been going back and forth from Santa Fe to Nashville doing these in-person trainings. And then in March, everything went online. And I'm not sure if she had done a lot of online training before, but all of us realized pretty quickly, like, this is a way that we can work with people anywhere. And we realized also really quickly how easy it was to step into the energy and access it even online, or even done constellations over the phone before.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, when I'm one-on-one with someone, it's a pretty similar setup, that instead of having different people step in for the different pieces of a family system, I am stepping into the energy of each one and just reporting back and kind of rotating. But yeah, that's how it's done remotely.
So instead of people, you have like little items or objects or
Little
like
objects, yeah.
yeah.
And do you put them on the floor? You put them on the floor? Or do you put them on the desk? Like,
You can do either. So I have done some where I've set it up on the floor, and then I'll just use a piece of paper and write the person's name, or sometimes it's like an entity instead of a person, but write the name of what's being represented on the paper and step on the piece of paper when I'm representing. I also have just like a big circle graph that I use, that I set up a separate camera for, and then I have little objects that's like Sarah was mentioning. Like I have little, like my little spiritual animals, like cardinals, butterflies. I also use crystals, coins, just little, tokens that people are probably going to connect one with somebody in their family, like it resonates with them. But then we use those objects to show like who is where in the field.
how long does it take to build this constellation and get through the process, the work, doing, identifying each person and talking through all of that? Like, how long is a typical session?
Usually the constellation itself takes maybe like 45 minutes to an hour. And usually it's like 90 minutes for a whole session, because I'll ask questions beforehand. But sometimes I don't ask that many questions. I just kind of get a feel for what's going on with the client. I don't ask a lot about family history, just enough to get like a baseline. And I let the field provide the rest of the information. But yeah, it's like 90 minutes total.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I've had one. I've done constellations with Laura Lee, and it definitely does create a massive shift. I mean, and it is not an instantaneous. Haley has experienced theta healing with me before, so she knows that's
Okay.
an instantaneous. Like you walk away and you're like, wow, I'm different.
The burden is lifted.
Yeah. This is
It's
a little
gone.
bit different because I feel like it works with the entire energy of everything. So like, if you've got your parents in there and you've got your kids in there as that, it like the energy kind of trickles down to them too. So like you may feel better, like I do after a session with Laura Lee, I feel better personally, but it takes time for the energy to kind of just move into all those systems and really make the shift that happened during that process. So
I think that's called the unfolding process.
that is the unfolding.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying like that. I did experience that though, but I felt better after the session because there was some insights that you gained from it, things that you didn't know. So it's not like you go in and you're like, oh, okay, it's all done. Now I just wait. No, you actually do get some insights while you're in the session, and you do walk away feeling very, I don't say very different, but like a lot more confident in the situation. You don't feel like that you're as lost as you once were when you stepped into that room or that space or that call. So, yeah.
I'm full. Can you see I'm full of questions?
Yes. Ask away.
No, because I know that it'll open up a whole nother conversation. But
Let's do it.
Okay. So I know that I have blocks. I know that I have blocks. And I think that a lot of my blocks, especially when we're talking about some of this kind of stuff, is set up as protection. And I think one of my biggest hindrances would be, do I really want to open that can, even though I know that, because I'm a bottler. I'll just, we joke around and it's like, oh, that person just went in a box. Like, I put things and people, situations, memories, experiences in a box. And, but I can put it in a box and I can walk away and I never think about that box again. And I don't know, it's my protection thing. Because I never go back to the box. I never pull it out and go, I'm not one of those, that brings it back up. I mean, it's in a box, it stays in a box. I lose the box. I'm like, I don't know where the box is. So I guess, I'm a little like, I get a little nervous because I'm like, oh, is this going to require me to, first of all, find that box and then open that box because I may have even forgotten what's in it and then pull the stuff out of that box and deal with it. So there's Haley's little counseling question session right there. Like it's it's a little bit of a concern, just a teeny bit. So when you deal with people and you bring in clients, do they have the same level of denial that I do, or that kind of trauma where you've just boxed it and put it away?
Resistance to healing, absolutely. I think I've had people who have experienced my work as a part of a group who have come to me afterwards and just said, like, this is so amazing. I wish I could do this, but I think it's just like too late to, and that, to me, it's along the same lines of what you're saying. And, I think everybody is on their own healing journey and you have to be ready to look at this stuff. You have to get to the point where you're like, I feel stuck, I feel blocked, and I want things to move. And this is what I'll say for you and for anyone who might be resistant and scared of seeing what's inside the box, is that experiencing a constellation and seeing that work has this beautiful way of allowing us to see things from different perspectives, and almost experience what other people were going through that we might not have ever understood otherwise. And being able to see it from this more neutral perspective where you're getting to witness it from all angles is, it allows us to cultivate this level of compassion that I don't know that we otherwise could. And doing that, I think, makes it a lot less scary, and a lot easier to let things move and heal, move as an energy. And what else? I just had a thought fly out of my head.
Well, before we wrap this up, I do want to point out to Haley, because we're talking about this deep interpersonal work, but there's another level to constellation work that I think is really beneficial to anybody that runs a business, because you can do constellations based on your business and the structure and where you want to go. That's what Laura Lee said, is she had this abundance block because she wanted to grow her business. So you don't just have to do the deep interpersonal work. There's also this other level where you can bring in your business organization, your business structure, and run a constellation around that.
Oh, wow.
I remember what I was going to say. and then I can tell you about that if you
Go
have
for it.
questions. But also, you have to work with a facilitator, a healer who you really trust. And for me, that was what made the big difference on my own personal journey. I was about as closed off to healing as you could get, but I was desperate for things to change. And I feel like the divine just brought me in touch with a healer who made me feel safer than I had ever felt before. So I trusted her to put out whatever I needed to see. And I felt like, whatever's there, I'm not alone and I feel safe with her. So let's do this. So that was the other piece. And then to what Sarah said, you can constellate anything. So if you're not wanting to do like a deep dive into family wounds and generational trauma, if you're just wanting information about your business, like you have different options, different paths you can take, different people you're trying to hire, whatever it might be, you can tap into the energy of all of that. And that's kind of like Constellation Light. It's a great way to get started without having to like do a deep dive, into the big black box.
I love that, Constellation Light.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of like the perfect kind of dip your toe in, especially in dealing with business and other business owners, and kind of bringing a whole new set of tools to the business toolbox. And now, thank you. Now I have a ton more questions, and what I would love to do is to see if you're open to coming back and talking to us about kind of outlining the process of constellation work within business. And it might
Absolutely.
be, a real nuts and bolts kind of thing, but I want to take it down to, hey, everybody, if you really want to dive into this and, basically compartmentalize and get a really good feel for that strategy piece in your business, then let's talk to Laura Lee and get it straightened out, right? Because then, that makes all the work that I do in amplifying brand messages so much easier because everything is coming together. So how do people get a hold of you and book a session, whether it's for personal constellation, family constellations, or for business?
Okay, so my website is www.theconnectioncoach.com. The E in connection is a 3, like a backwards E to represent the mind, body, and soul connection. I'm also on Instagram at Coach Lollipop. You can connect with me there too.
Excellent.
Awesome. And we'll have all that in the show notes, definitely. So if you didn't catch that 3 instead of an E thing, it'll be on the the notes.
Then you can just copy and paste.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Or just click.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. This has been a fun conversation. I get excited talking healing because that's my lane. I know sometimes like it's not Haley's lane, so she's like, she gets excited too.
No,
she has all the questions because it's not in her lane.
It's not my lane, but man, I'm enjoying being a passenger.
Yeah.
Because I'm I start wandering and looking around at all of the possibilities.
Yeah.
And then of course I'm the 3-year-old, like why, and how come, and how can I get that? So anyway, I really do appreciate you and the amazing talent and expertise that you bring to the table and to enlighten us today. I'm so full of questions. So let's connect because we have to have you back.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
And for everyone else, we'll see you again next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.